Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, beautiful souls. Welcome to our Tuesday, always reliable Confessions of an Awakened Boss Lady. Here we are. We're having an amazing day where we're coming on to really connect around one of our really hot spots. One of the things where we kind of fall into quicksand about, right? And this is one of my favorite conversations, which is money. For those of you that are new here, my name is Patty Ferreira. I am an intuitive women's success catalyst. My mission is to help you break free from everything that's keeping you small, everything that's holding you back, and really assist you, mentor you into moving and tapping into your power. So every week we come on here and we talk about the different pieces that may be keeping us small, bounded, domesticated, conditioned, all the things that keep us stuck and stagnant. And today we have an amazing soul on here, one of my colleagues and friends growing together in business, Susan Diamond. Welcome, Susan. Thank you for being here with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm like really excited to be here. So thank you.
I'm super excited to be here. I'm super excited to have you because you carry some serious codes around a topic that is a very sensitive spot for women. And I am ready to get in here and really unpack this baby and really talk about all the ways in which we behave in this area of our lives. So we all know we're talking about money, and I want to first hear a little bit about what you're up to. Really get to hear what your current passion is and what, how you're contributing. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Yes, yeah. Well, I always like to refer, or I consider myself to be a social change agent who's
Yes.
passionate about women's economic empowerment. And I'm really passionate about women's economic empowerment because for a number of different reasons, and I'm sure all the listeners are aware of this when we think about, the gender pay gap and women living longer and women putting less money away and women being a little apprehensive when it comes to the investment side. So it's for me, it's really important to help women feel comfortable around money and start talking about money because believe it or not, still today, it's such a social taboo. I mean, women we're comfortable talking about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but when it comes to our personal finances, we have a tendency to be a little more elusive when it comes to that. I mean, I know, if you're invited to a friend's for dinner and you started the conversation by asking, well, how much personal debt do you have? You wouldn't be there for dessert, I'm sure.
You're definitely not going to get dessert. And it would be seen as, an over ask or a, breaking of boundaries, all the things that we believe is wrong or that we have judgment around money. And I love that you're on here today because one of the things that matters to me is for us to normalize these conversations, right? For us to be able to have these conversations in a transparent, open, casual, because that's what it is, dynamic, right? So what are some of the things that you're creating currently in Her Finance Club to help women get there?
Right. Well, I had initially established the Her Finance Club after leaving the finance industry. And what I was seeing was some of the real life impacts of how relationships with money can wreak havoc on women, emotionally. And it can be a huge source of pressure and stress. And of course, if we're not talking about this And worse than that, if we're afraid to talk about it to each other or ask questions, then it's challenging for us to move forward. And what I experienced, I experienced this myself earlier on, and certainly with women that I was meeting with through the financial planning, was that there was guilt, there was embarrassment. Oh, I should have more money at this point in my life, or just overwhelm and shame. And of course, what do? I mean, and I do it as well. We don't like these feelings, right? So, and especially if there's a fear around it. So what are we going to do? We're going to ignore it because it kind of feels better. I like to refer to it as, the ostrich in the sand. We just bury our head so we don't have to experience those feelings. And I one of the things that I see as part of the problem for women is, unlike men, men feel very comfortable. And again, it goes back to, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about this, it's these unconscious barriers, or what I like to refer to as money blocks, that we often have. And especially if we don't know we have them, it makes it challenging for us to move forward. And of course, men feel very comfortable talking about money, talking about business. They'll do it socially. They'll do it on the golf course. They'll do it at work. But as long as it's a taboo for women, that's going to keep us ignorant of these better habits and practices. So part and parcel for starting the Her Finance Club was similar to what you had mentioned, Patty, was this is to create a judgment-free space for women to feel comfortable to talk about money, or to ask questions about money. So I'm on a mission to socialize the idea that it's okay for women to talk about money, because knowledge is power. And when that knowledge helps you become more independent, then it's going to translate to empowerment. So my goal is to inspire 1 million women to start the money conversation, whether it be with your spouse, which I can't believe how many women I talk to that don't have a conversation with the person that they're sharing their finances with, or your kids, because we want our kids to grow up to feel empowered, especially our daughters, right? And again, this is the way we have to be more connected and less afraid of our money. And,
I love it. I love how you're creating this call to come inward and have the conversation and feel safe to be met where you are. Because when I talk to women, I mean, I feel like women have several places where we give our power away, right? We have several domains of our lives where there's conditioning to give away our power, to look the other way, to allow someone else to come in and make determinations for us, right? And the understanding and the experience that I've had is that our relationship with ourself and our self-love and self-mothering shows up in all the areas, right? So if we're going to step up and take care of ourselves through creating our businesses, through creating through following things that we're genuinely, purposefully passionate about versus the job or the thing that they told us. If we're going to start to seek sovereignty in these other areas of our lives, the money conversation gets to come first, because it's a table stake of what you're creating, right? And sometimes it's out of order. Right? We're out here building our business, right? We're out here creating the brand, and picking the colors and knowing what our logo gets to be and focused on the purpose or the service, and we can't have the money conversation, which is a direct translation of a sales conversation.
Right. And I think, I mean, women, we do have a very different relationship to finances, I find, in terms of, money and investing than men do. But it's because we have a different experience with it. So as women, we tend to view money, it's not a means to an end. It's not about wealth. It's a tool that we have to improve our lives, to make a difference in our community, to create the life that we want. So when I talk with women, it's always about, what they value most or what's important. It's not, I need to make lots of money or I need to be wealthy. It's like, I need wealth because I want to leave a legacy for my kids, or I want to make a difference in my community. So it's always about, the improving other people's lives as well as our own. But I think, we hinder ourselves. We have these personal limitations that, prevent us from reaching the potential of what could be. And it often goes back to, as we kind of just mentioned, these unconscious barriers or money blocks. And I think one of the biggest things that I see, and every woman does it, is the prioritizing the needs of others over our own. I mean, I don't know if any of these thoughts sound familiar to your listeners, but anything extra I have, I give to my kids or loved ones, they deserve it more than I do, or I don't like spending money on myself. That's my mother. Never spends money. I mean, my money story and my behaviors and beliefs come directly from my mother. But she won't spend money on it. She'll spend money on everybody else. And I'll just share this quickly if this is okay. So I like to go back to, so our mindset and behavior creates the results that we have with money. So if you're not creating the results that you want with money, then you got to take a step back and look at your money story, which has created your mindset and your behavior. So my mum, she's 86 now, and I usually FaceTime her. She's got an iPad, and I was over visiting her in August, and earlier in the summer was talking to her on the iPad, and she's saying, oh, it's pretty cold, for being July. And she's sitting there and she's like, oh, I've got an extra jumper on, an extra sweater. And so I'm layered up. And I'd said, well, if you're that cold, have you got the heat on? I'm not putting the heat on in the summer. I'll just put extra clothes on. You don't put the heat on and pay for heating in the summer. And while that's wonderful if we're thinking about, conserving heat and the environment and everything else, but if it's detrimental to your health, then that's a whole other thing. So I see, that, I don't go to that extreme. I'll walk around thinking, oh, let me turn the heat down because it's the summer. I really should have it, down to 50 so it's not kicking in because it's warm enough. So that's, I think of my mother, and I refer to it as her bleak behaviors, because she grew up on a rural farm in Ireland. There was no money. And I don't think they had electric in the farmhouse till the 60s. So that shows you how rural it was. But, I know a lot of women can probably relate to this because they'll talk about feeling guilty about taking time for them, or they show their love by giving gifts. And I just have to say, if any of these thoughts, sound familiar to you, and Patty and I were talking about this before, here's the truth. Put your own oxygen mask on before helping others, because taking care of others starts by taking care of yourself. so you can be the best version of yourself.
That's the place where I feel like it's seen more often, right? Like I could see, I see several behaviors that you're mentioning in my conversations with women, and the thing that I feel is important to mention is when we talk about money blocks, when we say things like money blocks, and we say things like money mindset, and we say things like being in right relationship with money, like I feel like there's a segment, not all, but a segment of women that are like, I'm good. I'm good. Like I got this, and I'm in right relationship with money. And there's a finessing and like that has occurred when it comes to money, where we have gotten sometimes to a place where we genuinely believe that we're in right relationship with money, until we start to really become the observer, like take the emotion out of it and just observe
Right.
our decision making and our actions and our behaviors. And a lot of times it shows up in what we give ourselves permission to do, like you just mentioned, right?
Yeah.
I can invest in myself, and this is distinction, right? The discernment. I will invest in my business. That's acceptable.
Right.
But investing in my mindset is something I'll do when, right? And that's an example of having things in the wrong order, because we already know what you just said. The belief and the behavior brings in the results. So if we're not working on that inner work of the belief, of the mindset, of the consciousness, that's the most meaningful thing we can do for our children, for our success, for our satisfaction. And a lot of times there's the no to that because it's seen as a luxury. Even self-care around personal development, mindset work is seen as a luxury versus, you know, investing money in your business, right? Which is more of the behavior. Another thing that I see women doing when it comes to money is they'll give themselves permission to do small things, like I'll buy the blouse or I'll get the shoes, right? But I won't do an expensive thing. They have like a threshold of how much they're worth in terms of self-investment, right? And these are little nuances of how, you know, being in wrong relationship with money shows up.
Right. And I think, I think it ties into, you know, everybody has a different money story. So we're all unique with that. And, you know, I've got 3 siblings and we all grew up in the same household, but we've all got very different money stories.
Yeah, totally.
So I think, you know, it's tying it back to the results. Are you getting the results you want with money? And if you're not, then are there negative behaviors that are creating those results and heightening your awareness to that, and what's making you think a certain way that creates the behavior? So I think it's definitely about, you know, heightening your awareness to that, because I think I see a lot of uncertainty and decision paralysis when it comes to that. I'm not sure what my options are or what decisions I need to make, or, you know, retirement is so close that nothing I do will change anything, or retirement is so far away, I don't need to worry about it right now. So again, it goes back to, I think, as you're saying, you know, success is liking yourself, liking what you do and liking how you do it. I think that was what Mayo Angela, I think, said that. So it again, you know, information alone is not going to create transformation in your life, right? You know, you don't have to have all the answers either to take action, whether, you know, you're struggling or not to make a decision. But I think it ties back to, you know, somebody may think, oh, you know what, I'm fine. I don't have any issues with money. But if they're unconscious is not heightening their awareness to some of the behaviors that they're having. And I think, whether you're single, partner, divorced or widowed, retired or still working, we all have these internal barriers. I work in this field. I have them. And I have to heighten my awareness to that all the time if I'm going to do something, like the shopping thing, because a lot of times, we might shop for emotional reasons because we think it's going to make us feel better. But I'll put myself in check and say, well, okay, do I really need this or do I want it? And, is it tied to what my goals are as I move forward, or does it take away from that? So I think it's just stopping yourself first and asking the question, because as soon as you kind of set your mind or your brain to the problem solving, or asking the question, it goes into like a problem solving mode, then kind of you're off that little emotional kick and can start to think, is this a wise thing for me? But I will share, this is just a little tip for everybody, because I know a lot of women that do shop emotionally just to feel better. And we know that shopping online is very easy, but the beautiful thing is that, you can put stuff in your cart, but you don't have to buy it straight away. So what we know now is from neuroscience is that dopamine rush that we get that makes us feel better isn't when you actually buy the item. It's like you can get your dopamine rush by putting it in the cart and leave it in the cart and go back 12 hours later and ask yourself,
do I
still want this? And you know what? 9 times out of 10, you're going to say, no, I don't.
I have experienced that so often, and it's a very good tip and a very good way for a woman to check in with herself. Right. Check in with herself, which is what I hear you saying, right? Like the thing that I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing an invitation to come in to self-reflection around money, and to really start to ask the difficult questions, other interesting and curious questions around money, and to really start to get a feel for where you are in relationship with money, because that nothing is standard, right? Like some women may be in a relationship with money where they don't value it and they spend it and they just allow it to just be something that they treat and splurge, right? And other women may be in a relationship with money where they're afraid of it and they think they're going to lose it and they're going to be without it. And all of those are fine in terms of where you sit. Can you ask yourself the question? Can you meet yourself where you are and come to a harmonious, sacred, sweet spot around money for you? Because every woman needs to be able to see herself in this, right? Am I giving my power away, whether it's spending too much or not enough, whether it's one area, one side of the spectrum or the other? And when you talk about bringing women to having the money conversation, I think that if we just did this, where we sat and just talked openly and transparently about where we're at with no judgment, just curiosity, it would open up to so much awareness and knowledge and empowerment.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and again, when we were chatting, we talked about, as women, so I like to refer to myself as the recovering perfectionist. Because, as women, that's a trait we all have. And we all feel that, I think it's, there was a survey done on applying for positions. And when women look at a position description, they look at it, and if they don't meet 95% of it, we're asking ourselves, do we need to go back to college before we apply for this job?
Yeah.
Whereas men will look at a position description and feel very comfortable if they meet 60% of the position description, because they feel, yeah, I can handle this. So again, as women, I think we have this perfectionism, and we feel that we need to be much better at things than we actually are. And I think that's really important for us to think about that. And an example I give of that, I speak with women who have been working at home as the CFO of their household and taking care of their kids, and might be talking about, oh, you know what, I'm thinking about going back into corporate now my children are a certain age, but I've been out for 10 years and I'm not sure that, you know, I'm going to be able to, you know, get a job. And so, you know, we'll start to talk about, well, you know, what are some of your roles as this, you know, you running the household? Oh, right. You know, you've got 3 kids, you're running to different sports events, you're managing the budget at home, you're doing the shopping, you're making sure all the bills are paid. I'm like, you're a project manager.
Yeah.
So it's really thinking we don't necessarily think about all the skills that we have and apply them to wherever we want to transition. And that includes money, because I hear all the time from women, oh, you know, I don't know enough about it. And it turns out that the CFO of the household, they're paying all the bills, they're managing the money. And it's like, well, investing, again, it's just learning a little bit about it. So don't, you know, cut yourself short and think you don't know enough. But I think we have to have a place where we can talk about this so other women can say, oh God, I'm not the only one. You know, Patty experienced that, or Sue did, and that's how they dealt with it. So I think it's really, really important, just as you're doing now, having these opportunities for women to join in a discussion and hear about what's happening and asking questions, because that's going to help us move forward. And
that is what makes the huge difference, because what you just described is the essence of a woman selling herself short, playing small, right? Playing small, which is a tendency, a behavior that a conditioning, because it's understood as being humble and not being, you know, selfish, and all the things that are underlying that behavior, and all the things that are underlying us looking the other way when these things happen, come from a deeper rooted belief. Like, money is seen to be harsh, right? Money is seen to be a very direct conversation. So being able to come to these places and have these conversations and get awakened, because the awakening is always going to be with self. The awakening is always going to be when you're willing to ask yourself the questions, and really connect to that piece, which I'm mentioning, which is the self-reflection. So you can only awaken to that which you're willing to look at.
Right. Oh, yes, that's for sure.
That's so before we you know, get off here, because we're a couple of minutes into being done, I do want to hear from you, maybe, like, what are some of the behaviors that you can see in a woman, and what are some of the ways in which you can help her understand that she can move forward from that? Maybe not the actual tool, but maybe an example of women that you've seen in a certain behavior and you've been able to move them forward, especially in this time where we know there's so much wealth being transferred, right? Like this whole piece is big, right? Tell us a little bit of one of, you know, ways in which women could see themselves moving forward.
Okay, so I think everything goes back to your money story. So I would encourage you to think about, what types of money messages did you receive when you were growing up? And that's both verbal and non-verbal. You know, were they positive or negative? Were they taught or were they observed? I mean, did you learn about money through disappointment or success? So even if the adults in your life didn't openly discuss money, you know, as you were growing up, you still picked up on how it was handled in your family. So, you know, what was happening around payday? Were your parents arguing about money? Was there a feeling of tension about paying bills? I mean, in some instances, there might have been, you know, like a traumatic event, whether it be a job loss, death, or a divorce. So, you know, we have to think of things, you know, that any of those situations could have created, you know, extreme frugality or spending. And all of those experiences combined are what forms your money story. And then that's how, you know, your mindset. So, you know, as I'd said, I have 3 siblings. So you can experience the same situation, but walk away from it differently. So sometimes, you know, it doesn't matter if the messages were consciously or subconsciously learned. Those lessons have laid the foundation for your current beliefs as an adult. And there's probably, you know, they're still driving your day-to-day actions and relationship with money.
I totally agree. Yes.
I think, you know, you have to, you know, walk back to your money story and take a look at that and, you know, start to question, well, what was happening around that? And then you'll think about, oh gosh, you know, because there was such frugality, or there was a divorce, and you know, I was living with a single parent, and there was no money. You know, you could walk away from that having, you know, I guess that's not fair, you know, money, you know, created this situation, and, you know, avoid your money in the future because you had such, you know, a traumatic childhood based on not having stuff. Or you could have, you know, a totally opposite experience, say, I'm never going to be in this situation. I'm going to make sure that I will put myself in a position where I will always be able to take care of myself and not have to worry about paying bills or not having enough money for an emergency. So you know, you can walk away with different stories, but I think that's where you need to take a step back and start looking at how that may have influenced some of your current mindset and your behaviors, because we can rewrite our money story. Yes. It's not carved in stone, but we can only rewrite it once we become familiar with it and heighten our awareness to it.
That is super powerful. I love that you're, you know, finishing us off in this piece where it's all about coming inward and really looking at what happened to you. And based on what happened to you, what were the extracted, the derived beliefs, right, that you now hold true, right? Because very much the situation. And then having the opportunity to shift that, having the opportunity to see a different perspective, to maybe look at it from a different point of view, so that you can come closer to that harmonious place of where money is helping you. Money is in relationship with you. Money is a tool that gets to support you versus all the other different, you know, dynamics that exist in relationships.
Right. And I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I wrote a book this year that I'm really excited about, and it's the Money Belief Formula, Mindset plus Behavior equals Financial Success, because I do believe this is a critical strategy to help, you know, all of us examine our money beliefs and our behaviors. And once we do that, then it will help us translate those money meanings, which allows us to start to make that mental shift toward, you know, that abundant mindset by implementing the money belief formula. But I have to say, you know, I Took me a long time to write it. It's a short book. But again, it was that perfectionism, keep rewriting. It's
Yeah,
not good enough. Oh, what if people don't like it?
yes.
And then in the end, I just had to let it go. It's like, you know what?
I know where you're at with that. I'm currently writing my own book, and I'm in that place of like I keep checking it and it's never enough. So I totally get how much of this comes through, even when we're like, you know how they say new level, new devil. Like even when we've done the work and we're in our comfort zone and we
Oh,
feel that
yeah.
we're empowered, the minute we rise to a new version, to a new higher upper limit, there's that challenge again. There's that
It's
thing,
that little inner critic.
Susan, this has been life giving. This has been so much joy to be able to bring in such a sensitive topic and to be able to bring it in with such graciousness and such a safe space. I know you're a member of our group here, and the ladies could connect, reach out, get in touch with you. Feel free to come in and chime in on any money discussions that we're having here. And I want to hold you with like love and a deep bow for all that you're doing. Like, seriously connecting to that 1 million and more women to have the money conversation. I think that is huge. So sending you a big hug and
Likewise.
thank you so much. Have an amazing day, Susan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Much appreciated,
Yay.
Patty.
Yes, likewise, likewise.